What's going on, everyone? If you're watching this, I'm officially 30 years old, and I want to thank you for all the support thus far. And 3 decades, it passes by super quick. Like, I remember the first day when I came out of my mother's womb. It was a crazy experience, and I'm joking. But here we go. Right before I blow out these candles, I want to share 30 harsh truths I now know at 30 that I wish I knew at 20. GPA matters and also doesn't matter at all. I went to one of the best engineering schools in the whole wide world, and it was beat into my head and everyone's that the indicator of your success for everything in your life in the future was literally the number that would be your grade point average, aka your GPA. Honestly, if you're not doing a master's or PhD, in the end of the day, if you're just getting that degree to get that first job, after you land that first job, unless if GPA is a hard requirement for doing a very specific skill set, it basically doesn't matter whatsoever. And literally, no one talks about it. No one will ask you. And even if they do, what are they going to do? A whole lot of nothing, because you got the job and you're probably killing it. Simply put, GPA is like an entrance ticket. Once you're in, that's it. You're in. We're all human, but that doesn't really mean we all necessarily understand each other from the get go. I feel like one of the luckiest individuals because I've literally grown up with the internet from basically a young age. And because of that, I got to know literally all the knowledge that there is of how I could travel the world essentially for free, leveraging a concept known as credit cards, points, and miles. Without this, I literally may have been stuck in wherever like my locale was or my state or just my country because I genuinely believed like how would I ever be able to afford to go and see what was really out there? And I'm so glad that I was able to travel the world because meeting different people from different backgrounds, different walks of life, that type of cultural type of exposure is literally the exact way to connect with other humans other than just, around you, but literally those all around the world. If I could go back to when I was 20, I would literally prioritize this as the number one thing to do and definitely leverage the concept of everything known as geo arbitrage. In English, that basically means that, hey, there's a cheaper lifestyle in everything that may not be present in your own country. And so, whatever you're earning in one country, in your own, you could be getting that much more value anywhere else and have that much more value out of life as a whole. Many people know about the movement known as financial independence, retire early, otherwise known as FIRE. This is essentially how much you need invested in the market to generate passive income slash gains, and knowing how much your lifestyle costs, you can reverse engineer how much you need invested to create X amount of income, and then guess what? You're financially independent slash retired early because you don't need to trade your time for money. Had I known about this concept earlier, I would have kicked myself in the back to work super duper hard and just figure out the fastest way to get to that certain number or at least even half of that, for example, to give myself more time to then focus on what I truly cared about, the relationships around me, the creative work I love to do day in, day out, and everything else basically that I really want to do versus trying to just, trade my time for money, for cash flow, for bills, and all the things that, most people are doing. People's priorities change. The people you expect to actually follow through with a certain duty, whether that's, a friend, a family member, whoever, in general, this may change on their side, and it has nothing to do with you. People are emotional. They're subjective beings, and they're not objective logical robots. So this point really, took me a long time to digest, but when you realize that, hey, we're all irrational beings for the most part, it is what it is. People change. I've changed over time. You may have too. So it just is what it is. But it was really hard for me to accept as I was going through that transition when I really felt like, dang, I need to rely on this certain person to do certain things. Buying versus renting. Growing up, I thought the biggest achievement was literally the ability to own a home. Little did I realize that taking out a 30-year mortgage basically means you've signed yourself up to give payments for the next 360 months, even if it's a fixed amount. That's something that really is the case. And if it's paid off, we still owe property taxes, which basically could be a whole rent equivalent payment, and that's in perpetuity no matter what. For sure, my net worth, it's increased exponentially on paper because I'm a homeowner. At the same time, what's really not easy for most people to whether know because of knowledge that's shared when people are growing up, or just fathom when it unfortunately does one day happen. If you have no support from others, if you're, let's say, a sole earner, and for some reason you lose your job, or God forbid you can't work, guess what? And you're not able to earn income to make these payments, you basically lose your home. And if that was the only backup option you have, you basically don't have a place to live. Let that sink in. Respect is earned, not given. Growing up, there were a lot of individuals that were around me whose families, very rich, very powerful, that respect that the overall family had, these individuals would get it just through like a transitive property. And yes, me being associated with these individuals, there's definitely that kind of side respect. You kind of automatically get it. But I think growing up with that type of environment, I just assumed, oh, wherever I go, respect would be basically given. In the end, you still got to prove your value, you got to earn your stripes, as they say, and you will get said respect. If you go looking for it, it's almost like the thing that you want, it may not come to you. And so if you're just doing the actions that basically garner that in the society of where you are, then you'll get it by default. But no, you can't just walk in and just expect it, because that's basically not how that works. It's okay to be alone. You could call it lack of social awareness, but I never realized how social I was versus literally other folks around me. Without this trait, I wouldn't be where I am today. Simultaneously, I got so used to having folks around me, in the sense like I would either be in situations where people were just present, so it could be these like kind of extrovert kind of situations. At the same time, if I'm not talking to them or there's no common thread, it was just me being in a comfort spot because, oh, there were people around me. But in the end, it's okay to be alone, is a lesson I learned, where you have more time and energy just saved by not being outside all the time, but also time to focus on yourself within and kind of reassess what's going on and have all those internal talks, versus just being out, where you just are kind of not having that time to yourself. And so it's okay to be alone. I knew I wasn't afraid of failure, but what I didn't know was that I was afraid of success. The first time I heard this, I thought it was a bunch of blarney. I thought, how could this be applicable to me? But then I waited a second, thought about it, and realized, yeah, it's true. In the past, if I wanted to achieve something, get something done, reach that goal, hit it, whatever, it was doable because I didn't have other, let's say, priorities, responsibilities, other excuses, whatever way you want to put it. If I wanted it, I go get it, done and done, move on to the next thing. As the plate was getting full, I realized I was like, okay, well, I know myself. If I wanted something, I can go get it. But then I was stopping myself from achieving certain goals because I was like, okay, well, if I can do it, I can do it. But guess what? I wasn't going that extra mile to see it through. If you don't see it through, it's basically that fear of, after the fact, can I really sustain? Can I maintain? Can I keep this thing, whatever that is? So it was really not the fear of trying. It was the fear of, after I get there, kind of what happens then and can I keep it up? The habits that got me here are ones that I wish I kept, which would have got me further today. From reflecting each and every night about, hey, how did this day go? What could we have done better? How could I have optimized it in, let's say, a V2 of the same day, like a version 2? And at the same time, planning for that next day of, okay, what's on the list? What do we need to do? What do we need to achieve? So that by the time the next night rolls around, if I reflect and I think, what was my HOTD, the highlight of the day? What was that most important thing I needed to do for progress? If I kept up these type of habits, I definitely would have been further than where I am right now. The person that's hated the most is the one who's the most uncontrollable. Most folks are stuck in their own situation, whether financial or otherwise. The most uncontrollable person either has nothing to lose or has so much in abundance that they can afford to lose so much and it doesn't phase them. And the average person doesn't have either of those situations. Most people who have this feeling towards this type of individual, it's because it's a reflection of how they feel inside. They basically wish they had that, but they don't. And so if you have that unfair advantage which you can tap into, go for it. Because literally you're the one who can take it to the next level, and all these naysayers are just going to be watching from the sidelines. Boundaries are actually important. When I had one focus, it was easy. Just focus on the thing, heads down, keep it going. When I had two focuses, it was even more fun because I could switch between both foci, if that's the plural of focus. And so it was kind of like a game of sorts. When I had three focuses, Basically, I could be doing two primarily, and the third one, it would be something I'd rotate out as a way to keep things more interesting. When it comes to four or more, that's where these boundaries are important, is what I learned, is because let's say you can focus on two or three kind of primary focuses, but when you have so many, you're basically not seeing consistent growth in all of them, or maybe one of them is growing, even if it's exponential, right? But does it take care of all the sum of the growth of the other four, for example? So, long short, the boundaries are important in terms of understanding hey, if you're looking for certain results, then you have to put limitations on the other activities that you're spending time on, and vice versa. So, it's very straightforward because without boundaries, you can always be in this loop of why am I not progressing? Why am I not progressing? But when you actually look back like 5, 10 years, you may have done a lot of progress. But since you've been self talking yourself as if you're not making progress, it's not going to feel like that. And then you basically didn't put in these boundaries, which are actually important. You are your own biggest obstacle and biggest proponent. Within the last 10 years, a lot has changed for me. And 10 years ago, I definitely had massive confidence that, if something I wanted, like if I wanted it, I could get it, period. No ifs and buts. Simultaneously, over time, I fell into my own ruts where basically instead of me being my own, my biggest proponent, I was my biggest obstacle. And what I took away, basically what I can share here today, is there's this phrase, one of my good friends, he said it's as follows: this too shall pass. What this taught me was that in the times of really bad, kind of situations, this too shall pass. But just because you're at the very top, that doesn't mean, don't enjoy it. But if you let it get to your head, like you can, but then this too shall pass. And so basically, whether you're in a bad situation or a good one, whether you're in a situation to really propel yourself or you want to stop yourself, really it's reminding myself of this phrase, this too shall pass. And it's like, all right, just keep on going, keep on being quote unquote stoic, just streamline that. You're just kind of like this, up and down, but you don't need to be totally up or totally down. And this too shall pass, and you'll get to the other side and keep it going. Adult/family bills are a lot different from when you're single. To me, I always used to tell myself, man, if I'm on an island serving ice cream earning $10 an hour, what does it matter? I can take care of myself, no biggie. I used to have, let's say, like an allowance that I told myself that, hey, if I have $500 a month, $600 a month, I could do pretty much anything in the world. Now, I would say that because my wants were not that big, I was very frugal, and getting by is super easy. On the flip side, this is what the case is. It really comes down to how you're going to structure it. It's not really a numerical thing. So, for example, someone, nowadays in the news, as you hear, yuppies, which are young urban professionals, they may be earning six figures plus, but they have nothing and they're living paycheck to paycheck or in debt, etc. And so, in this same vein, the bills being separate for yourself versus maintaining or supporting a bunch of other people. Traditionally, you have, let's say, one earner, they're earning whatever amount it is, and 50, 60 years ago, that one salary could get a house, two cars, maintain a couple kids, you got your wife, you got two dogs or whatever, like the American dream, white picket fence, all that stuff. And today things are different. And so what that really means is that yes, the bills are massively different, but how massively different they are is actually, it's exponential. And so even if you're getting, let's say, 10K a month, like that's a lot of, a big number that a lot of people strive for, that may not solve, where you're trying to live, what you're trying to do, and all these things. So it's not even about, said money. It's about how you're getting that money and then what is that growth trajectory on that path you actually are at. Health is wealth. And as obvious as it freaking sounds, the truth is when I was 23 years old, I was working like 16 to 20 hours as a management consultant. And it was for a fixed dead end salary, you could say. And yeah, the progression is pretty crazy when it comes to an income perspective. At the same time, it really is the fact that, hey, I was trading my time for money. And it wasn't even like I was trading my time for a bunch of equity or being on the partner route and signing up for that. So in the end, this point for me personally, it was me literally almost breaking my back for this job. And I wouldn't be here being able to stand making this video right here right now. So it's more of a gentle reminder that it's a harsh truth, but whether it's a lesson I wish I knew when I was 20, it's probably the same difference for someone who should know that same lesson when they're 30, 40, and hopefully their health is willing up till they're 50, 60, and etc. All people care about is the following line: do you hear me? Do you see me? Does what I say matter? This quote, it's by Oprah Winfrey. And after hearing slash digesting this simple yet crucial phrase, it's changed my life entirely. It's basically the motivation for folks, whether it's me, whether it's you. In the end, you're watching this video, but really what's happening is, hey, what if whatever I'm saying, it's basically a reflection of maybe what you're seeking. So in other words, do you hear me? Do you see me? Of course, talking on camera, looking straight at you. And does what I say matter? So if you comment down below, I respond. That's basically feeling heard. Or, if I'm giving an answer, it's like, hey, are you listening to me? And then what is that next step? Reflection, insight, etc. So it's just feeling valued, feeling wanted, feeling desired. Because in the end, humans, we're all about connection. And so that's where, if you talk about it online or even physical communities, it's about gathering together as humans versus, being siloed and otherwise. Happiness comes from within. I've had the blessing and opportunity to travel all across the world, and I've also lived in different places in the world in general. And what I've learned is you could be at, your favorite artist's concert, for example, somewhere across the world in the best location ever. And the point being that looking around you and everything, it could be great, great music, great vibes, great scenery, all the things. But just because you switch your location, it doesn't mean that, happiness exists at XYZ destination. It's really the inverse, where you could be anywhere. You could be in the worst part of the world, in the dirtiest place, in the hottest place, all these things. But you could be jolly. And that could be that true happiness. And so it's kind of reiterating the point of your surroundings are great and a lot of people chase a lot of things. But in the end, that happiness is going to come from within. Life is unpredictable. Apart from the obvious fact that, if you're a part of this generation and, surviving slash going through COVID, that definitely was a very unpredictable black swan event. The reality is that in general, it's almost assumed like, okay, hey, you go to school, you graduate, if you're taking, let's say, a 30-year mortgage or, an 8-year car loan or some other type of, time-based thing where you're owing back money, it's almost assumed in the same vein, kind of in the old school mentality where, hey, you have a job, you stay at the same company for 40 years, you have a pension, you have a retirement plan, benefits along the way, you have the American dream and all these type of things. And the point being that life is unpredictable in the sense along that path, anything could happen. And not necessarily job loss, maybe health gets in the way, maybe some other priority, you have to tend to something and you got to do what you got to do. So life being unpredictable, it was hard for me to see that at the age of 20s or like in that whole range because I was like, oh, okay, this is just the beginning and everything's going to be all rosy and like a Disney movie and all these things. But just want to reiterate that it's a realistic approach to know that life is unpredictable. But also, if you live like it is predictable, that's where those folks are setting themselves up for the most absolute failure, in my personal opinion. Comparison is the thief of joy. It's a common adage, and I would say it's true for the most part. But the harsh truth I learned about this was really twofold. The first was exactly as it sounds. I was comparing myself, and it was taking out, the joy of basically everything within. And I was comparing myself in something I really love to do and talk about. And I was like, you know what? Like, this sucks, but also it's just where I was because I wasn't able to reframe that comparison in my head. And when I did, this is what happened. When I reframed it to, hey, let me compare, but let me not look at it like in the negative way of comparing, how typically it's understood, but let me compare in, okay, hey, they're here. So instead of taking it as what am I versus them, it's almost the inverse of, hey, if they're there, that's like an inspiration where I can look up and see like what was a path and how could I get there. And so when I reframed it, it was instead of comparison as a thief of joy, it was me comparing. And I realized, wait, there's like a way instead of like, saying this sucks and stopping. It's kind of that thing where, how can I do X, Y, Z? So comparison is a thief of joy. And I basically robbed myself of my own joy. So I was technically the thief. Yeah, never mind. A goal without a plan is a mere dream. I used to hit goal after goal because I always had a plan associated with it. There was never a time where I didn't have a plan, and so hitting the goals was just a default. When I started losing the habits of planning in general, whether it's goals or just in my life, it was just kind of, going on autopilot in a certain way. That's when I stopped hitting my goals clearly. And it was like I'm dreaming of things wishing to happen, but they weren't happening. And then that actually became like a spiral of, oh man, why is it not happening? Why is it not happening? I couldn't identify the root cause because my default baseline was that I was always planning in the first place. And I never realized that it was such an important habit that I basically had lost over time. A beautiful line I would have never expected came from Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon. And so he basically was saying, people are stressed and anxious basically for the following reasons. The first is going to be the fact that, if you just don't know the next immediate step of how to do something. So, for example, let's just say, the internet's not working and you're trying to fix a leak, somehow for some pipe that's, leaking water. And you could be stressed about the fact like, man, it's leaking right in front of me and I don't know what to do. And you don't know if you're supposed to maybe use duct tape or not, or masking tape or not, or tape, or where's the water valve to shut it off. Like, I don't know. And so basically you're stressed or anxious really because you just don't know the next immediate step is. Okay, maybe if you knew where it was and you can take action. But if you just have nothing around you, no cell service, no nothing, and you're in this predicament, it makes sense, right, of why you're in this, because you just don't know the immediate step in that moment. The second facet of this was basically, someone trying to change something that's not changeable. And I believe everything is possible. At the same time, as an American, to never pay taxes again, it's a beautiful thing to pay taxes one way because that means, you're earning money regardless of what taxes and how they help the average, citizen every day is a different topic altogether. The point being, if you're trying to avoid paying taxes or trying to escape death, right? Like at the time of recording, there's no cure for immortality, which, it sounds like it's right around the corner. But the point is, if you live in constant fear every day, like, oh, I'm aging and, it's coming closer, the end of my time. Like, dude, like the moment you were born, the end of your time has technically already started. But were you feeling that since day one? No. But when you became conscious, that person started feeling like, oh man, my time is coming to an end. So the point is, like, stress and anxiety, obviously they're in the mental, they're all in your head. At the same time, these are very like realistic reasons of people why they may always feel in this constant loop of it, because they're trying to escape something either, that they can't per se, or they just don't know the immediate step to get exactly what they're looking for or what they want. Being on top of everything isn't always the best. I used to be that guy. Every single day, multiple times in a day, I would check my bank accounts, check, prices of assets, or like example, like Bitcoin or, stocks, certain ones where even if I'm not involved and I'm not even thinking of getting involved, I would just, track it, kind of know, what's going on. It's like the news, always being aware of the news, but what's actionable from it, if you ask yourself, that's could be like the true question mark. I used to be so much in what I would call the comfort zone of knowing exactly what's in front of me, being in the present, and everything sounds great, right? It's like that Zen type of feeling. But afterwards, if you ask me what's next, how do I, take it to the next level? That's where I basically was like, well, I don't really know. And so is it really the best to be on top of everything was a question I used to ask myself. And it was like, the moment I started having a better plan of what my next steps were, I realized that what was taking me away from exactly doing what I needed was this always maintenance of, like a game, checking all my notifications. Oh, did I get something on Facebook back in the day? Did, whatever app, some notification, whatever it is, I think you know what I'm saying. So in the end, it's like, don't waste your time on the stuff that, isn't going to move or change day in, day out. It's really about focusing on the things that are actually moving or, going to propel you to that next stage, or literally whatever you're looking for that isn't right here in front of you, because those type of things sometimes don't change, like how much cash is in your drawer or something like this. That's not going to grow by recounting it a million times. Stoicism actually can give you results. Back in the day, there were so many events and situations which I literally would spend so much mental and emotional energy that it would be pretty draining. And these were for things that were essentially out of my control, whether it was traffic, the news, or even certain prices for certain stocks. Like, these are things that are, I can feel some type of way and react, but there's nothing I can do about changing it unless, I can change the whole market, but that's a different thing. All that said, it's basically saying to me that I learned after way too long that I was wasting, said energy on things that I basically couldn't control, like traffic on the highway. Time flies by. It sounds super obvious, but if you ask me what was I doing when I was 15 years old, I can probably tell you almost the play by play, and it feels like it just happened yesterday. And on that same note, I wonder, 10 years from now, when I'm turning 40, Imagine making the same type of video. It's crazy. Elders deserve respect. It's not that they don't. It's just that not all advice is the best advice. And most importantly, we get a lot of advice from our elders, and for the most part, I'm sure it's great. But is that advice the best for you? And that's usually what isn't the case for many. I used to blindly be forced to respect elders, and then I used to respect them on my own accord. But in the end, what I just said is really true, where think about yourself and how it affects you versus just, general advice that it's general because it's for the general person. And if you're watching this, you're not the average person. You're trying to be that much more next level, for lack of a better term. Success looks different for everyone. I always prioritized earning money over spending time on other things because the understanding was when you have X amount of money, then you can afford all that time to then do the things you really want to do. It took me a long time to put myself in the frame of someone who's just willing to spend time as if they had unlimited of it, just like if they had unlimited money. And for me to understand that, okay, they're doing this, but what a waste of time. They could have been doing anything else to make that next dollar. Being able to have fun for fun's sake, honestly, is its own thing. And if anything, it's a skill that I needed to learn because it was easy for me on autopilot to do things that basically make me money. Like in my free time, I would do DoorDash, Uber Eats, because hey, I'm driving on the road and I'm making something as that time is, kind of going on. I'll listen to a podcast, so it's productive time for me. But everyone's version of what is success is definitely going to be different. And it was super hard for me to realize that, okay, I am my type of person. Maybe you're a different type of person. And Billy over there on the side over there is a different type of person. So all these things, everyone's different. And success, it's different for everyone. Trust is the only thing that exists after a certain level. When we talk about money, it's a made up construct. It's not even real. It's something we made up as a human society. Power, on the other hand, is something that's respected. If someone has power, it has to be respected by someone for that power to even exist. So, similar to money, once it's created, it has to have some value that can be exchanged. And similarly with power, that means power is able to, get things done, whatever that type of thing to get done is. And apart from money and power, what's left is trust in the sense like, if you have you and, you're a kid, you're at the playground and you're playing with someone you just met, right? Let's call him Billy. So basically, it's trust that hey, you're going to come tomorrow after school to the playground to go play tag or whatever games you're playing, right? Or go ride on your bikes. So it's not about money or power. And so those same principles when you're younger, when you basically have nothing, it's really trust. And then at the big leagues, when everyone has money, when everyone has whatever they call power in their life, it really comes down when you deal with each other to that trust. Not everyone will like you. I used to take it to heart. Like it would ruin my day, my week, my month, my year. If even one person around me, didn't like me or was not feeling real positive around me because of basically something I did, which I didn't even know what I did, at that time. And so the point is, I would feel so bad. But what I realized is that, the most successful people, if you look at them, are they all liked? And so, in other words, does liking someone or everyone liking a certain individual, does that mean success? And chances are the answer is no. So if you look at like Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Justin Bieber when he first came to fame, the point with all of these people and many others is that they basically, stuck to their guns. They, were very hard on their stance on whatever, right? So Elon going for, electric batteries are the future, or EVs in this example, Donald Trump with whatever his backing is. And with Bieber, the thing is his skill, it's immaculate. His singing voice and everything. When back in the day, it was not what people expected. But that type of divisiveness, whether pro, con, bad, good, whichever way you look at it, it basically has engagement. And so more people are talking to you or talking about you rather, and that spreads like wildfire. And that means everyone's involved, everyone's engaged. And so success could just mean more eyeballs on you. And that's basically that famous line of like, even bad publicity is good publicity in the sense you're still being recognized, whether it's good or not. So not everyone liking you is just kind of the fact. It's a harsh truth, which I never really, would have thought when I was younger I could ever digest, but it is what it is. What got you here won't get you there. This is basically saying that all the progression of skills you've accumulated or all the things you've done, basically they've gotten you here, but maybe it won't get you to where you're seeking out to be. It's definitely a loaded question. And for me personally, it's basically having, let's say, a hard skill set. So in this case, let's just say all right, I'm like a hardcore engineer, I'm the best coder in the world, or what have you, right? But if you're trying to, let's say, be, 100 billionaire or have a company that's worth 100 billion plus, you could be the best coder. But chances are the person to convey how smart of an idea or how great of an implemented solution or how much value you can provide to the marketplace, basically that person, you may have that hard skill set, but if you can't communicate that, there's going to be someone else who sees how, valuable whatever you're working on is, and they'll go be that spokesperson on your behalf. Maybe they'll raise capital, they'll raise funding, and basically there will definitely be a cut which will go to that individual because they're the ones who source the capital to take your idea and then spread it to the masses. So the point over here being, what got you here, maybe you're the best coder, coming back to this example, but the skills for you to now monetize that to the next level, unless you know how to monetize it already, great, is that the skills would be communication, being able to public speak, being able to communicate, but then having persuasion, not a negative stance, but to inform upon said idea, but then have that influence. And so all of these traits basically, which as a coder, typically speaking, the stereotype is you could be in front of your computer, you know the skill, you're doing the thing. Maybe you don't even know how to communicate, but you know how to write code, read code, manipulate it, all those things, right? But it's not those skills that basically could take you if your goal is having exactly that 100 billion or unicorn type of valuation. It may not be that thing that you can get because what got you here won't get you there. Saving is for losers. When it comes to money, money as a construct isn't meant to really increase in value over the years. If anything, as the population grows and that money that exists, yes, we may be printing more money because there's more people, but the understanding is that, okay, it's not like you wait a year and, an apple was $1 and next year an apple is only 50 cents. Like that'd be great where you can get even more. But that's assuming like our production was more than double, and there's just that much abundance of resources, which is great. But how the system's basically set up is the inverse, where we just assume like, okay, let's decrease our consumption over time, but overall in society we're going to be fine, and people who contribute to society, they earn more, and I know that's not equal all across the board, but the point is how money works. If you just keep saving, you'll lose money just through of the concept of inflation, where you afford less over time, like of the true value of how much your dollar can purchase. And on the flip side, if you're looking at earning, you can earn infinity. So saving is for losers has two types of thoughts where, yeah, it sounds harsh, but in the end, what it's really saying is don't just save your money, definitely consider investing. But more than that, it's if you want to earn money through active cash flow, not necessarily just getting a better job or what have you, but a real, true, defined way where you can impact a lot of folks, you can figure out a way of, okay, how do I create so much basically money or value that you can earn exponentially way more than you could ever earn from just the thing you're maybe doing now, and you're only saving 100%, but when you earn, you can earn literally 100% plus. Sky's the limit. Just because you're the number one follower today doesn't mean you can't be the best leader tomorrow. Right before I graduated college, I had 2 internships under my belt. And every day when I used to go to them, I couldn't imagine my life being like this for the next 40 years. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that thought. The point here being that I basically let my guard down on purpose to just follow the system after a certain point, after I graduated. And I had a lot of resistance when I started working my first corporate America job, and I was like, all right, you know what? What if I just accepted? So, in other words, not accepting to the system, but accepting to what's in front of me and actually being present to learn whatever skills I had to teach instead of just being, kind of judgy and, oh, I can do better on my own, which I still wholeheartedly believe and have believed over the last, what feels like almost 10 years now. And that's really important because I became the number one follower, but now I'm in a position where I can also be, and I have been and am, the number one leader in different facets in my life of just different ventures I'm a part of. And so what it means is you don't necessarily need to be a follower to be a leader. But when it comes to the respect of a leader, it's understood that, hey, that leader that was on the ground, they really know how it is for the day to day of the individuals. When you see that script, it's kind of like, hey, that person went from zero to hero, or that underdog story. There's always more mad respect from the average person than the inverse, where maybe it's a nepotism or a friend who knows a friend, and they're in this really high position, but there's not that relatability to that person that's typically known as barking orders in this way. And so all of this to say, just because you allow yourself to follow something doesn't mean that you will always be a follower. And it doesn't mean you're never going to be a leader. It's really just about the frame you think about it in and how you want to get there. Because a lot of people try leading from day one, never even willing to follow. And that only goes on for so long. Some people follow their whole life, never even thinking of being a leader. And sometimes they get nudged into leadership and they don't even want it. And I'm not talking corporate America, I'm talking like with anything. So take a look at yourself and realize, do you want to be a follower or a leader? Because if you want to be a follower, you can follow today, you can keep on following for the rest of your life. But if you want to be a true leader, then there are certain habits, certain disciplines, certain actions and things that you learn from following, which really, in my opinion, make that true leader. And if you came this far, thanks for coming to the end. It's time to eat some cake. Let's freaking go. That is hot. Oh, man. Toby, come here. Yeah? Yeah. Good job.
Oh,
Good job, man. Good job.
loves that.
See you guys.